Hello, this is Jimmy Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So, first we have, uh, we were already against the next war from LP National on Twitter, and I posted that, and they quote tweeted Lindsey Graham, who said, "Hit Iran now, hit them hard," and that's what they replied, "We're already against the next war." And I said, "They have wanted war with Iran for as long as I can remember," and of course by they I mean the DC Uniparty, and and yeah, I personally don't think we should have war, but it seems like a lot of people on social media are really being upping their jingoistic war hawk tendencies, and I don't think that's being very libertarian. I would say I think that's more being authoritarian and sending people off to die in a war. When you get drafted in World War Three, don't come crying to me. That's what I have to say to those people. I would say. Then we have 7 years later, why Trump staff is lying is still right in the mark from Bloomberg.com by Patom13. And I said, honestly, a lot of Redditors probably want Trump back in the White House. They need their boogeyman, and even though he isn't president anymore, they still can't shut up about him. And I also added, you guys have been doing this for about a decade now. People are going to get tired after a while. I linked to the woman who was screaming at the Trump's inauguration. Not a coincidence that the link video is from roughly the same time as your article as well. Remarkably little has changed in the Orange Man Bad discourse since then. So the thing is that you can only circle jerk something for so long before people start to get tired of it. That's my thoughts on that issue. I don't think Trump's libertarian. I don't think Biden is one either. But I think they're mostly just figureheads. I don't think either of them could personally run Arby's. So apparently, but apparently they're the most powerful people in the country. So it just goes to show you that they can use the narrative to manipulate people. The real power, I would say, lies with the CIA and co, the deep state, as uh, we like to call it. Also, so that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have dangerous. Pelosi calls for FBI to investigate ceasefire supporters from commondreams.org by T-Sturbed. And that's a cross post from the International News subreddit. And we kind of talked about that in the last podcast. How she said, oh, everyone who's pushing, who says therefore ceasefire are working for Putin. And now she's saying, oh, we need the FBI to go after them. And then I also heard, oh, they're working for China, So Pelosi's like, if they dare to send it all, well, they're just need to be investigated by the state because they're working for foreign powers, and that just goes to show you that it's like they just blame everyone who disagrees with them. Oh, that must be a conspiracy, or Russian funding, Chinese funding, etc., etc. And that's increasingly why those labels are increasingly useless, because when you call everyone you don't like Russia, that's just you just can't say Russia, 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 and expect everyone to. It's like the boy who cried wolf. It's the Pelosi who cried Russia, and that's what we're seeing here. Then we have r/Libertarian Uncensored discusses and grades the U.S. Vice President's number 22, Levi P. Morton, and I posted that, and I said, unlike his grandfather, Benjamin Harrison managed to serve his whole 4-year term without dying, so Morton never got to be president. At the time of his election, he was a former U.S. representative and former U.S. Minister to France. Today, we call them ambassadors instead. His biggest action as vice president was to oppose the end of the Democrats' filibuster of the Lodge Bill, a piece of civil rights legislation that would have allowed for federal force to ensure voting rights for blacks in the former Confederacy. Harrison didn't like this, and delegates the next RNC replaced Morton with Whitelaw Reid, the sitting minister to France. That ticket would go on to lose the general election to resurgent Grover Cleveland. After his vice presidency, Morton served as governor of New York for dying on his 96th birthday. Final grade C. And then, what was that? So then, we'll move on to the next thing. Republicans who denounced Biden for using too many executive orders now urge him to use executive orders because they don't want to legislate, from NY1.com by Clorox. And that's a cross post from the News of the Stupid subreddit. And yeah, I personally think, we shouldn't be, we shouldn't, be leading by executive order, but it just goes to show you how people are hypocritical when it comes to politics. That's just kind of what politics is, a bunch of hypocrites saying, oh, it's just the only standards most people have are double standards. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Biden says he would shut down U.S.-Mexico border right now if Congress sends him a deal from PBS.org, and that's from Kage blah blah blah. And yeah, I think this might just be posturing from him, but I don't think the border is ever gonna be, no. Some people want open borders, some people want closed borders, some people want a wall. I don't think we're ever gonna have a consensus on that. So I think if people want to enforce a border, I think they should be able to. But it's ultimately who wants to enforce what, and that's my general political philosophy, as I would say, who wants to enforce what. I like what Incrente said here. Why do people keep using these one or two word quotes? Whatever happened to actually quoting what someone says at enough length to actually convey meaning? And I added, it's because social media is meant for agenda pushing rather than informing. Then we have war pressure grows as Biden plans military response to deadly Jordan attack from Axios.com by from Z5563. And I said, the U.S. government clearly wants war, it seems. Of course, they are never the ones fighting in them. And I also had sitting U.S. senators tweeting out, hit Iran now, hit them hard, and the U.S. government has troops stationed all over the Middle East and has been bombing and drone striking for decades. So, I think they clearly wants war. And like Yuck replied, but the individual senator was from the opposition party, and he said, there is no opposition party in Washington, they are a uniparty. So that's important to remember, People say, oh, Biden's against war, Trump's against war. Neither of them are against war, But Trump might posturally against more so, but neither of them are really against war. You can tell because Trump appointed the key architect of the Iraq war in John Bolton, rather than actually, even though he marketed himself as being against the Iraq war. So just goes to show you how they're nothing but hypocrites. Then we have why English is not the official language of the U.S. from FlimsyHow5563, and that's from iflscience.com. And yeah, I personally don't think, anything should be official in any capacity, I would say, because I think the people, if they want to have official things, they should be able to, but when people are forcing, their official things on others, I think that's not being a libertarian, that's forcing your beliefs on others. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Republican senators censured by Oklahoma GOP for negotiating with Democrats on fragile border deal from USA Today, and that's from Kage blah blah blah. And yeah, I definitely don't think censorship is libertarian, and that's something that I think we should. That's why we need to get rid of it as soon as possible, because ultimately, if you dissent at all, they'll come after you for it, and that's increasingly how the society is working. If you're not allowed to dissent at all without partisans coming after you for it. Then we had Bayer ordered to pay $2.25 billion in latest Roundup trial from Reuters.com by Zach Ness, and I guess that's good. Ultimately, if people want to force Bayer to pay money, I think they should be able to. But if they can't do that, if they don't have the force to do so, then I don't think they should be forced to do so as well. It's like the vaccine, you can't sue for the vaccine liabilities, and because people don't have the force to force them to force the law to allow that. So I guess that's just how it is. Some people, companies are going to be held liable, others aren't, and that's just ultimately how life is. Who has the force to do what? Then we have U.S. National Security Agency buys web browsing data without warrant. Letter shows original title from Reuters.com by Doctor Who 07. And I said, not surprising, sadly. And Dr. 07 said, I like a 21st century Bill of Rights anytime. I said, it doesn't matter if they don't follow it, just like the current Bill of Rights. It just doesn't matter. They don't need a warrant anymore because of the Patriot Act has normalized that, and I don't think that's libertarian. We need to force them to have warrants. And if they don't, then just don't let them in. If they force their way in, you have every right to act in self-defense, I would say. Then we have, it is long past time to bring the troops home, all of them, from Spike Cohen on Twitter, and I posted that. And the full tweet was, I agree with the loved ones of the free soldiers who were killed in Jordan. May their memories would be a great blessing. They should be alive right now because our politicians should have never sent them to Jordan. It's long past time to bring troops home, all of them. And I added, agreed, Jordan is not the 51st state. We shouldn't have U.S. troops all over the world. And Tom 13 says, are those of you who are arguing for bringing them all home also advocating withdrawal from the world of the United States too? And I added, I would say so. It's not the job of the U.S. to police the world. That's probably the biggest reason why the majority of the world hates the U.S. and its government. The U.S. is not the world police. The U.S. needs to take all its troops from every country, I would say, and it's not and not police the world, because it just feels like it's like, why we have bases everywhere? Because it's the U.S. is increasingly a global empire, and you're not allowed to call them out on it without shields coming after you for it. Then we have, in a world where the Constitution mattered, Congress will be notifying the White House, from Jack Hunter on Twitter, and I posted that. And it was quote Queen Ken Klippenstein. The White House has notified Congress that the U.S. has troops on the ground in Yemen from The Intercept, and I said, the Constitution might as well be toilet paper with the way they treat it. So it really, no one really gives a shit about the Constitution and power, and that's why increasingly, government can just justify doing whatever it wants. Might as well just be toilet paper to them, as I said earlier. So it doesn't really matter what's in the Constitution anymore, because the politicians have the force to do whatever they want. And that's why I think we got to get rid of these guys. And everyone should just have their own government. People want to follow the Constitution. I think people will follow the Constitution, but I don't think people should be forced to follow the Constitution like the current government doesn't. They can have their own current government, and we can have our current government. Everyone I think should have their own government at this point. That's my fault on that issue. Then we have Milei takes charge. Argentina's president fights socialism and free market reforms, from John Stossel on YouTube, and I posted that, and I said, I might just write Milei for U.S. president later this year at this point. So that's my thoughts on that issue. I like Milei. Of course, I don't know if he can be president of Argentina and the U.S. at the same time, but it's always nice to try new things. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Also, it seems like people like Elon Musk saying, we need to put Somalia first, and that one GOP representative wearing an Israel military jersey in the house, it just goes to show you that, you can't serve more than one country, it looks like these days. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have exclusive, Montana family loses custody of teenage daughter after expressing opposition to her gender transition from Redux, and I posted that. And I said, feels like something you would see in California rather than Montana. Dr. 07 adds, it sounds like parents trying to force a collective on their daughter. I said, that's a fair point. You could also argue it's the state trying to enforce their values on their daughter. What if it was the other way around, the state forced them to undergo conversion therapy? And they replied, what values? The individual expressed how they wanted to be addressed, and the hospital staff did so. If the patient expressed interest in gender care, should the hospital not try it? I said, another fair point. I do think you can make the argument that it's something that minors can consent to. However, if a 10-year-old wanted to have sex with a 35-year-old, most reasonable people would probably be against that. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Increasingly, if you dissent from the woke orthodoxy at all, the state looks like it'll be able to take your children away. And I think that's going to happen with that's probably how we're getting into stuff like the social credit system, and how increasingly you're not going to be allowed to dissent at all without the state holding you accountable, and you might even be in prison. So that's how I think that's sadly the direction I think our society's headed, and that's why we need to resist it as long as possible. And let's see if there's anything new. Looks like there's nothing new, so I think we're going to wrap up there. I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.